Next one up from Kimberly Healy. And they say they've given over 33 talks and done 40 research interviews with women around sensuality. But when they offer a paid course, there are no sign-ups.
Uh-huh.
And they hear instead that they are overwhelmed. These people that they've quizzed, they're people, I suppose, they're overwhelmed, spinning, and scared. So, how can they market something in an area where there is, in particular in the US, they say, where there is so much internalized shame and fear? They can make things better, but it's like trying to convince people to go swimming who've never been in water. Um, yes, interestingly, I quite like this bit into the end. They're beginning to think that there is something about spending money to improve sex that might be the problem. Interesting take. What are your thoughts?
Well, there's lots of people making money in this field. A lot of people who are doing just fine in the kind of relationship, sex field, intimacy. So it's not that it's impossible, but whenever there's a lack of response from the marketplace, especially on something you're confused, like, man, I thought this would absolutely get a response and it doesn't. Well, that's a chance to learn. That's a great chance to figure what's going on. The very first thing I tend to do is just ask people, hey, I put out this offer, there was no response. I thought there would be. I'd love to get your feedback as to why. Is it too expensive? Is it too soon? Is it not soon enough? Is it overwhelming? Is it unclear? What's happening? If you can get some feedback from people, that's great. So it sounds like this person's done that. And we but then there's some questions you can ask. And so there's a general framework you can go, man, I just got to do a video about this because I keep going over it. But if an offer doesn't work, the very first thing I'm curious about is, did I get the attention of enough of the right people? Like there is a numbers thing. Some people say, oh man, everyone I've talked, nobody's bought. How many people did you talk to? 3 people. Okay, that's not enough. That's not a legitimate sample, you know? So are you just reaching enough? It may just be that. It may be that everything is fine, but you're reaching too few people. Second thing is the filtering questions. Like, do we know that this is for sure a fit for those people? And on 3 levels: relevance, credibility, and value. So first question is just relevance, and this gets to the niching thing. Is this actually solving a problem that they really want solved? Or is this just, hey, tantra is great, and we should have more intimacy and flow of beauty in our life, and it's stuff that you think people need, but it's not actually a real life problem. They're not in pain, and it's maybe not an urgent problem. It's something that's sort of chronic, and one day I'll deal with it. But, it's not that bad enough to complain. Sometimes not bad enough to do anything. Could be that, and so it's just not relevant to people. Um, they're busy. They got a lot going on in their life, and this is not a priority. So if you're picking an issue that is inherently not a priority, they might say it to you like, well, your offer isn't a priority, but it might actually be that the deeper issue is not a priority, and there's nothing you can do about that. If the issue is not a priority to them, it's not a priority. You can't change that. But let's just say, no, 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 I picked an issue. I know this is a priority. Um, Even this wording of it, I ripped off somebody's headline who was doing really well, so I know I'm nailing the relevance. Okay, then there's second is credibility. Do they trust you? Are you the one? Like, do they trust that you can help them solve this issue? Because sometimes people just give excuses. So I'm just overwhelmed, and they go spend the money with somebody else. So um, and the last is value. And the value piece, if you go to marketingforhippies.com/value slider, you'll see a little exercise. Uh, and there's a link to a quiz you can take, uh, which won't give you any feedback, but it'll send you a record of what you scored yourself. Anyways, but you can start to see where you're strong and where you're weak at the value, meaning when people are going to spend money, they're looking at, what's the return on investment? What do I get back for this? And there's a number of factors. There are kind of 8 things that they're looking lenses they're looking at the offer through. And anyway, the story of how I came across this is in the post, but so there's that. And you might get all of those right, but still you don't have a response because the risk is too high. Because it's like, yeah, this is relevant. I trust you. This is an insanely good offer, and the risk is too high. If it doesn't go right, I just can't do it. Generally, it's going to be somewhere in there. And if you find that the major roadblock for your clients is that they are too swamped, they're too busy, they're too overwhelmed, they just can't do it, and you think, I don't think it's that this isn't a big priority. I think they're just kind of in crisis. I mean, hey, that's probably not an ideal client. But something you could do if you just find this seems to be a thing is you could come up with an offer to help them create more space in their life. So it could be like creating more space for a better sex life. It's a starter kit. And it helps them go through their life and sort of declutter, simplify, make room so that they have time for this relationship, which they know they're going to lose if they don't focus on it. So you could come up with an offer that actually helps them with that very thing and helps them become ideal clients. Um, but if you can find people who are already ideal clients and this is already a priority, and we're looking for people always at the breaking point, um, which is three things. Number one, this must change. Not it can, it could, should, it ought to, it must. This just has to change. Number two, it has to change now. I can't wait another second on this. And third, I need help changing it. If somebody hasn't gotten to those three places, they're just probably not an ideal client. Um, and you could say, well, I want to sell prevention, but people don't buy prevention. So that's a non-starter there. So those would be my questions as to like, why is it that you're just not reaching enough people who are at that breaking point? It sounds like that may be the case. And sometimes, oh, I'm in a small town. There's just not enough people. And, most people, it's not a priority for yet. And, I would predict that for this person, there will be people for whom it's not a priority now, and in a year it will be. There's something about timing. So there is a bit of a numbers thing here where you reach enough people and they weren't ready before, but 6 months later they call you up and say, hey man, I really need to handle this, it's time. So those are my thoughts.
Lovely. All right.